We're live.
Okay, thank you, Judith. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the new season of DiEM25, to new coordinating collective, and to brand new start in front of us. In brief introduction of this live streaming, the new CC decided unanimously to continue the live stream, so here we are. The first topic of our agenda, of course, is a brief welcome note and a round of introductions, but very short introductions, so it doesn't take 40 minutes. Uh, and I would like to give the floor now to Srećko.
Why me? Okay, so I'm really glad that we are all back. I hope most of you had some sort of vacation. I know that in times of COVID, it's impossible to have any sort of vacation anymore, and that most of the people are tired and so on. But it's really great to see you, the old coordinating collective members and the new ones. So without much introduction, I think I would give the word to the new members of the coordinating collective to say hello and to present themselves, since this is a live stream, and then also to the older coordinating collective members to say hello to the fellow new collective members. Yeah, so please, Ivan, I think you should just choose the people who...
Okay, Beral, please unmute yourself, please.
You must click something on the left side which says mute, down.
Yes,
Yep.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me in this very significant meeting. And I'm now living, not a vacation, but living in Ayvalık, which is very near to Lesbos Island. And I'm looking to Lesbos Island from the beach, but we are confined. We are not allowed to move out of Turkey. We cannot get Schengen visa. So, but it's good to look to Lesbos Island and to dream about next summer how we can spend our days there. So I am not so familiar with this CC meeting, so maybe I will need your help during all these times. And you know, I'm an art critic and curator, but quite involved in politics in Turkey, not mainly in the main stream, but from the side of it. And I gave the good news that this lawyer, Aytaç Ünsal, was released just 1 hour ago. And this was the good news of today. Otherwise, we don't have so many good news during these days.
Thank you so much, Beral. And I think that you're too modest and that you will work with us just fine, or we will all work together. Better to say that. Patrizia, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. I am really proud to join this meeting and be part of our CC. Ready to work with all of you. And what can I say? I was member of the Italian NC for the last 2 years, working in the Com task, and ready to follow and moving on all together. I think we have a lot of things to do in this particular moment.
Yes, thanks. Juliana.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm also very excited to be here, and just shortly, I'm in Germany, and I've been working in the electoral wing primarily in the last 2 years. hopefully till November this year, and we will have a new board then. And yes, I'm looking forward for the next year with you all together.
Thanks. Now we have not so new members of the CC. That's Rosemary, Jordi, and Fotini. So Rosemary, please.
Hello, I'm very glad to be back on the CC. I can already see some real changes, so this is going to be exciting and challenging. And good evening to everybody. I'm speaking from London. It's gloomy and raining as usual in London, but here we are preparing for a DiEM25 UK election for our new National Council. And so one of the things I would love to do is encourage anyone who takes pity on us in Brexit Britain, in this awful COVID pandemic that we all share, to think about standing as candidates for the NC in the UK.
Thank you. Good use of advertisement space. Fotini, over to you.
Hello, comrades. I have to say that I'm really glad to be here with you. And I'm honestly looking forward to working with all of you, to cooperating. I'm sure we have an extremely difficult year ahead of us, especially given the pandemic situation. But I'm really looking forward, and I'm an optimist that we'll have a very exciting, stressful, full of work, but really exciting year. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jordi.
Hello, everybody. I'm very glad to be here again. And I want to congratulate not only the new members, but also the organization, because 5 out of 6 women, I think very few organizations in Europe do this kind of election. So I think we have to be very proud, all of us, about this success. And I'm proud because it goes in the same time as the beginning of the Feminist Task Force. We just had our first meeting yesterday. So, well, I think things are going pretty well in DiEM25. Not so good in the rest of the world, but let's see if we can help do things better.
Thank you, Jordi. So I think that we are done now. I don't think there's a need for all of us to introduce ourselves. Yanis, I saw your hand.
Well, thanks, Ivana. I just feel the need to express how emotional I feel because of who is in this Zoom. And I'm not talking about the 6 of us who are leftovers from the previous election. I'm talking about the 6 who have joined. To begin with, 3 of you, it's important to know that, have been with DiEM from day one in Berlin. Without Fotini, there would be no DiEM because she's one of the persons, together with Sergio and others, that were, part and parcel of doing the whole thing, creating the circumstances for DiEM25 6 months before the inauguration in Berlin. Jordi was in Berlin. Jordi was at the Volksbühne Theater, and one of the great shames that I feel is that there was no ramp for your chair, Jordi. Remember that? We hadn't thought of that. I had never imagined that a German theater would be lacking a ramp. And in the end, we worked it out. But, I remember Jordi being there from day one, from, the Volksbühne event. What can I say about Rosemary? Rosemary is part of the woodwork, the fabric, the DNA of this movement. Rosemary, it's wonderful to have you back. Fotini and Jordi were also part of the previous one. So, I'm more emotional about you, Rosemary, coming back. Juliana, I don't know you very well, but from the little I know you, I'm just so chuffed that you are on board the CC. Your presence, whenever I've seen you in Germany, in other places, has been a breath of fresh air and a very great force, which makes feminism at work within DiEM, not just a theory, but a practice. And let me just finish off with Beral, because Beral is a great friend from well before DiEM. And as a Greek, at a time when our countries are on the verge of war in the Aegean Sea, to have all of us, and particularly Beral, to have Turkey being represented in a transnational pan-European coordinating council collective. This is a statement about what Europe can be, not what it is, but what Europe can be. And having a representative, elected representative by all members, not by Turks, by the Greeks, by the Portuguese, by the British, by the Irish, by the Germans, and especially somebody of Beral Madra's caliber in the CC, we are effectively celebrating the proper Europeanization of Europe and of DiEM25. Beral, thank you so much for standing, and you don't need to thank me or us or anyone for having you here. You're here because people voted for you, like they voted for everybody else. So it's an emotional moment, and we must mark it as such.
Thank you, Yanis, for that. Okay, moving on.
I didn't say anything about Patricia.
Oh,
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Patricia, look, so sorry. Patricia and I have spent, how many months have we spent together going up and down Italy, from Palermo to Milano to Torino? Awful and wonderful days, terrible and brilliant. Folks, Patricia is a master PR person. I've seen her organize wonderful DiEM events out of zero, out of nothing, out of rags. Patricia, welcome to the CC. Maybe I take you for granted. I'm so sorry.
Thanks, Yanis.
It's a big screen, and it's really nice to see so many people in this screen, so it can happen. Well, okay. Now, where we are at, where we are going, what are our goals and timelines. This is something that we will be working on in the next short term, medium term, long term. So I would like Eric to open this topic, and then we will take it away. Eric, please.
Cheers, Ivana, thank you. And I mean, let me just say, I'm also incredibly pleased to welcome all of you, and to really looking forward to the next year and all the amazing work we'll be doing together. So big welcome from me as well. Hello from Brussels. What we will be doing for the next year is obviously largely up to us. That's the point of the coordinating collective, and a discussion that is pending amongst all of us. And it's one that will start today and continue for many, many months. But I'll give you a bit of an overview of where we left off with the last coordinating collective. So point number one is that we need to finalize the statutes of our electoral wings now that Meta 25 statutes are finished. The whole point was to use those statutes as a blueprint to ensure the sort of cohesiveness and coherence amongst all of our electoral wings to the best of our ability, considering the particularities of electoral law in different countries. But that is a project that we will be doing this year. To get the formation of our 7 pillars that make up our progressive agenda for Europe back on track. That is important for the policy work, but also the campaigning and all the lobbying, etc., that the movement does on the basis of that policy. Together, of course, with the reinvigoration and the adaptation of things like the Green New Deal for Europe and the post-capitalism pillar that was agreed in the Prague Assembly, to different national contexts, etc., to create, if you like, the bedrock on which we can start building our different policy programs around Europe and also campaigns. Then there is the questionnaire project, which we are now provisionally calling People's Gatherings. It's don't shoot us, yes, it's not the final name. It's essentially the project whereby we will push our membership and our volunteers outwards to connect with local groups around Europe, simple citizens, in order to discuss burning political questions in various countries and use the responses we will receive from this project in order to start building national programs for everywhere DiEM25 is active. This is part of an attempt to make DiEM25 more relevant and hence the European project more relevant to everyday citizens by translating it into something that is relevant to their day-to-day lives and offers solutions to their daily problems, especially in the context of the COVID pandemic and all the crises that is already leading to. Then we have a big attempt to focus more on grassroots campaigns and projects, really empower and shift the attention away from the mega pan-European political coordination stuff to more locally grassroots-based actions, and drive, if you like, the energy of the movement and the manpower of the woman power of the movement more to local communities and to make DiEM25 more present in local struggles, if you like, and then connect those with our pan-European mission and campaigns. And finally, and this is more internal, if you like, a deepening and let's call it deepening of the coordination and communication work that we do within the movement. The effort to better manage the different coordinators and organizers within DiEM, with the establishment of a membership coordination team, the restarting of the coordination calls that we were doing last year with the different organizers around Europe, our national collectives, our electoral wings, and so on, and the assigning of different countries to different members of the coordinating collective, so as to better split that work and not overburden a few of us, as was the case last year. But Ivana will have more on that. I think largely that touches the main outline of the things that were already in the pipeworks, if you like, from last year. And then the rest is largely up to us. And I think it'd be good to have a bit of a conversation about, where we go from here. But those are the things that we need to continue working on from last year. And Ivana will have more on that later, I believe.
Yes, I will open the topic of task distributions and who is going to be coordinating which country, and that will come later. But if anyone would like to speak on this general topic, feel free to raise your hand. Anyone? No one? Okay. Yeah,
perhaps I can take this opportunity to correct an omission of mine it's a good opportunity to mention the fact that there will be a questionnaire being sent around the membership in the next days regarding the addition of a new pillar to the progressive agenda for Europe of DiEM25, and that pillar is foreign policy. So maybe it's a good opportunity to mention that to those who are watching us, to keep an eye out for that, as it will be a very exciting new addition to the policy work that we will be doing.
Yes, excellent. Thanks for mentioning that. Yanis.
Well, thank you, Ivana. Look, 5 years have passed, more or less, since we started DiEM25. And it is time to take stock. And it is time to start planning for the next 5 years. We have to be ruthless in our self-criticism without at the same time neglecting the great successes and important contributions we've made. But we must also take stock of our failures. And also, in addition, we need to take into account the fact that the crisis in Europe and in the world is taking a different turn. It's a mistake to think that COVID-19 is a new crisis. It's not. It's a new intensification and reinforcement of the existing crisis, which gave rise to DiEM's foundation. But that doesn't mean that we must stay stuck to the original narrative. Let me be frank with you. Our original manifesto is an important historic document, but it's out of date. If you read it today, you think, okay, come on, guys, move on. We're in a different phase of the crisis. The narrative with which DiEM25 began in 2016, 2017 is still valid, but at the very same time, it is a narrative that does not take into consideration the successes of the establishment in zombifying the Eurozone, in winning the propaganda war against us, in creating a fake opposition with the Nationalist International that has squeezed progressive voices, and especially DiEM25's, very significantly. So we had a hegemonic narrative in 2016 amongst progressives, leftists, Greens, even some liberals, some progressive liberals. We don't have it anymore. We can revive it because the essence of what we were saying was correct. We need to reassess. So the proposal I'm going to make, and I'm prepared to do some work on this if you wish, together with anyone who wants to put something like this together, is to put forward to the CC, just for internal use, these thoughts about reassessing where we are and where we should be aiming to be within the next 5 years. A document for internal use that guides the manner in which we rethink our manifesto, we rethink our pillars, we rethink the progressive agenda for Europe, we rethink the narrative with which we must regain hegemony. The problem between 2015 and 2019 was we had a hegemonic narrative, but we failed in the European Parliament elections, and we failed abysmally. There's no two ways about that. We have to be clear, we failed. When we fail, we must say it, we failed. Even though our narrative succeeded. Our narratives convinced so many people. And if you look at the Extinction Rebellion, the Fridays for Future and so on, they are rejecting the Greens, the Social Democrats, they're rejecting, like we rejected, that even the European left. But what we must do, we must be able to connect a revived version of our manifesto and our narrative with this energy. And we have, as Eric keeps saying, and others keep saying, and Rosemary says, we need to empower people with an agenda which answers the questions that BBC or Deutsche Welle journalists would put to them on the street. Okay, so how are you going to fund the green transition? Where would the good quality jobs come from? It is the members that have to be empowered by DiEM25 to have this narrative. And for that, we need to have a reassessment. So this is my proposal, that by the next CC meeting, there is some kind of a document that whoever wants to join, we can put together in order to to have this discussion on the basis of something concrete rather than just abstract ideas. And I'm prepared to start working on this yesterday, so to speak.
Thank you, Yanis. I think that sounds great. So until the next CC meeting, we will receive a draft document and then we can work on it via email.
Whoever wants to join, joins, right?
Exactly, yes. Okay, so we are moving on to a little bit administrative technical side. So I will try to be very brief, and anything that I miss saying or you have questions and so on, you can also ask me via email, and we can also add anything pressing or needed for the next CC meetings agenda. So about the legal status of DiEM25, because that's a kind of frequently asked question. DiEM25 is a registered non-profit organization in Brussels, and that's our legal background. DiEM25 as an organization is an online movement which everybody from all over the world can join without having registered NGOs in 28 countries of EU. So that's how it works. When members join, they basically have an agreement with DiEM that the OPs will be what legally for us in Brussels is the statute. Having said that, this year, DiEM25 as an NGO needs to renew the statute. This is something that we planned to do in May during MERA Congress, but that was, of course, unfortunately canceled, as we know. So it was appropriate to wait for the new CC to do this. So this is also something technical that we will discuss or decide just at one of our next meetings. As for the finances, as the CC members, you will receive financial reports monthly at the beginning of the month. And that's also something that our members can see on transparency page on members area. And they can also see the planned budgets for certain areas like travel and events or NC and DSC budgets and so on. So these are the budgets that the previous CC agreed on. We can, well, now when you see it, we can, if you see necessary, discuss it again and maybe reframe it. Having said that, we are not a very rich movement, so the possibilities are limited. We are doing the best we can with the limited resources, and something that should make our financial situation better is a membership fee that should be implemented also. So this is just briefly. Anything that you have to ask or say, clarify, you can ask me in this email that I will send with the report. If you have any questions now, you can ask them now, please. Okay, I guess everything is clear. Moving on. Now we are at roles and task distribution. I will go with those more pressing ones because there are lots of things that can be done, and you will see how you adjust and what is the area that you would like to contribute the most. But in order to start with those calls that Eric was mentioning, movement and membership coordination calls, we would have to confirm or select members for certain countries for coordination calls. Those of you who were members of NCs or PNC know that we had those monthly calls last year. So I would like to make a proposal. I'll just go through countries, and then we can comment if there are anything to say. So starting with Italy, it's kind of natural because if you're coming from the country, then it's Simona, Patrizia, and Eric, like the people who were involved. And then one of these people has to be responsible for scheduling and coordinating these calls. So if it's 3 people, fine. It's 5 people, fine. But one has to be, responsible. So it's 3 of you. It's up to you to decide who is going to be responsible. We don't have to say it now. We can do it over email, okay? Is that okay with you?
Okay.
Moving on. Spain, it's Luis, Jordi, and Renata. Germany, it would be Juliana now, Eric, and Luis. France, Eric, and I would, sorry?
Ivana, Renata is still in the CC?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
So I would, for France, I would recommend Rosemary, if you would agree, Rosemary.
I'd be very interested. Thank you.
Okay. Great, perfect. And moving on, it's UK, so it's again.
France, who else? Ivana, Rosemary, Eric, and?
If
and
anybody,
Renata.
no, Renata is for Spain, but if anybody else is interested in
I
France.
can speak French, so if there's nobody else.
Eric cannot.
He pretends so he doesn't get kicked out of Belgium.
I'd like to be part of a team of 3.
Good.
Good.
Okay. UK, Rosemary and Eric, and we don't necessarily need to have 3s right now. We can add those later, but if anybody would wish to be on that team, Yanis, yes?
But I have to say that I'm not necessarily going to be available every single time, but I would be interested in being part of the UK.
Yes, yes, that's good, because as we said, we should all know what's going on in all of the countries, but it's just that you're taking care of these countries, you're keeping a close eye.
May I take advantage of his absence and also volunteer David for this team, given that he's lived in the country for a number of years, and I think he would be a good addition to it. And then if he doesn't like it, he can remove himself later, but I think he might be good.
Sure.
Add David, 4 people in the UK.
Okay, now Greece, it's Fotini and Eric. Yanis, you're naturally also on that team, and Luis.
It wouldn't be right for me to be on this.
Sorry?
I don't think it would be right for me because I'm leading mayor in parliament. It's too much.
Yeah, but it's like you know what's going on in Greece in those
I
terms.
do know what's going on. But not necessarily in DiEM Greece.
Okay, we will find out. Now, we thought that it would be good to also group some countries. So not only Belgium, but Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. And that would be David. And my proposal would be for Axel, because she's based in Brussels and she is, but we can also discuss that later. For Portugal, it's David, and we need some volunteers. Luis? Cool. Good. Now, we now have countries without NCs, and there are countries like Slovenia, Austria, Croatia, and so on. And I thought that we could group those countries.
You mean Yugoslavia?
No, Austria was never in Yugoslavia.
Well, we can put it back into the Austro-Hungarian context.
The Habsburgs, yes.
Yeah,
That's right.
something like that. And so I thought that Juliana could do that group of countries, while Eric can be responsible for Scandinavia, and I can be on both of those teams. Anybody else?
Srečko.
Srečko, you want in Scandinavia? It's cold there. You're in warm island.
The Austro-Hungarian part.
No, I will take Srečko for accession countries and East Europe.
Okay.
And that would be the whole package of all of the countries. Okay. So that's it. Anybody else? Luis, yes, yes.
Okay.
Ah, sorry, I skipped it. For Turkey, it's Beral and David. Eric and I were also involved in forming of PNC and so on, so we can stay on this team.
You couldn't take me away from Turkey if you tried.
Do you mind if I join as well?
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, so now we have teams, and you will get the schedules. Don't get overwhelmed. It will be maybe a bit hectic at the beginning, but we'll get the rhythm. For those who didn't have enough calls for now, we will have also membership coordination calls, and that's something to do with the role that Jana used to hold as a CC point person for local collectives, for DSCs. Also, in the set of these calls, we will have onboarding calls, activation, mobilization calls, and so on. So as Juliana was pitching in her candidacy with DSCs as her interest, I would like to ask you if you would be willing to be the point person of the CC for local coordination of local collectives, which also means a technical aspect of, registering them and so on.
Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to. I hope you will help me to find my way in, but of course, yes.
Great, Johannes.
Yes, I would like to support Juliana, especially with the technical side. Do we do thematic DSCs separately?
Yes.
Or
yes.
Because then I would propose that since I have been working a little bit on that with Rosemary, that we could also do that, and of course with everybody else who wants is welcome as well.
As I said, this is just the most urgent couple of things so we can start. And we have other things that we need to cover, like point person for advisory panel, because we will be having 2 transitions from DiEM to Progressive International. So David and Pavel won't take their roles anymore. In those terms, we need another new point person for advisory panel and for progressive agenda, but we don't need to decide about that now. We can leave that for later. So I think that this covers it broadly. If you have any questions, please go ahead, and we will, of course, send the schedules and chase you for that. Also, as Rosemary mentioned, we are having UK NC elections coming, and we need to organize the interviews with candidates. So you will be also getting a doodle to fill out your availability for those interviews. This is all from me now. I hope it's not too much. Now, next topic is also something Georgie mentioned at the beginning. And
Ivana, can I
yes.
make one suggestion regarding roles?
Sure.
And this is the first CC meeting. Now, I think it's important that new members, but also old members, but primarily new members of the CC, are given an introduction to the way that the CC works, so that all of you, Beral in particular, who's never been, or Juliana, who have not been part of the CC process, get a sense of how the process works, and also a sense that as elected members of the CC, you are in control of the process. This is not simply, you're not just fitting into machinery like cogs and expected to, function. You have political obligation, a political duty to pass judgment on what we do and how the process works, and even be critical and ask for changes or propose changes. But before you can propose changes, you need to know how things work. For instance, something that our members have always pointed out, and we've pointed out to our members in discussions in the forum, here, there, and everywhere, is that for the CC to work, we need to have ex officios. So we need to have people, like Luis, like Judith, like Mehran, and so on, who have a specific job to do that the elected members of the CC, together with them, because we are one group of comrades, after all, we're a movement, We decide collectively, but then the ex officios have the job of actually carrying it out. And those of us who've been elected are responsible to the members for what the ex officios are doing. So it's very clear. We must be very clear about this process. It is important that new members of the CC get to know the ex officios, get to know what each of the ex officios are doing. So maybe we could have a separate Zoom of the new members or anybody who wants to join in. Maybe some of the older members of the CC are not familiar with this process and want to participate in this discussion with the ex officios, so that the ex officios can present to the new members what it is that each one of them does, right? So that elected and especially newly elected members of the CC are privy to exactly what the process is, and they can form their own judgment, and they can come to the CC with proposals about how the work can be restructured and so on and so forth.
Eric?
Just take this, because I think it's a very pertinent point that Yanis has made. Just to take it a step further, there is definitely, and this is normal in any organization, a knowledge imbalance when you have some people that are laid over from a previous sort of structure, and then new people come in. And that knowledge imbalance can very often translate or be felt as, and indeed sometimes might be indeed, a power imbalance, right? And the best thing we can do, apart from, you know, our very best to share that knowledge, and with that knowledge share the power, is also to be honest with ourselves when we feel like we are lacking that knowledge and therefore lacking the power, and ask for more of it. I believe that there is no reason why any of that would be held back from anyone. So it's very important, I think, at all times for us to be honest with ourselves and not be honest with each other when we feel like we're out of our depth, or we feel like we're not following what is going on. To interject and to make sure that we always feel involved in what is happening, so as to not allow misunderstandings to fester and so on. I think it's really important to get that out there from the first call, and that is human and normal, and that we should keep chipping at that for the entirety of the CC and all CCs to come.
Yes, thanks. Yes, and in this welcome email, we said that we would organize a technical, so to say, Zoom, so you can all ask those questions or, you know, get to familiarize yourself with the way DiEM works, so we don't need to spend much time at this meeting. I've missed.
I need to interject once more to say that this is not a technical issue, it's a political issue. It's important politically for members of the CC who've been elected to know what each of the ex officios are doing, so as to have a possibility of making proposals about changes, about, you know, because this is how the whole process becomes legitimate democratically. So it's a political issue. It's not, there are no technical issues in DiEM. DiEM is a fully fledged political radical movement.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I have a hand from Judith, and I would ask Jordi to change the order of agenda topics, because David needs to leave earlier. So to get an update about Progressive International.
May I say something on the previous point?
Okay.
I think we can discuss it, but we could consider live streaming this technical political meeting about what ex officios do, because I feel this is something very important and interesting for members to really understand what everybody is doing in this. So my concrete proposal is, shall we consider live streaming this meeting?
Okay, sure. Judith, I saw your hand.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to take the occasion to let you know that since I'm responsible for IT and all the programming that gets done either by myself or by a bunch of volunteers who have been helping out, I'd be happy to sit down with you and even talk for 2 days straight about how our system works. If you have any questions, please just come to me. And also know that if you have a bit of technical knowledge, if you have taken a programming course at school or something, I can give you access to the entire code base of DiEM25 so that you can read it all yourself. And that is an offer to all DiEM members, because we're not open source, but we are DiEM source. It's available to all DiEMers.
Thanks, Judith. Okay, David, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm a bit in the dark here. So I think that just a short piece today. I know that we've slotted 5 minutes, but I think that today's remarks can be the prelude to a longer conversation. Obviously, there's lots of questions and a lot of conversation that's happening on the forum and elsewhere in the membership about what's happening in the Progressive International, how is this initiative evolving, etc. The key thing I think to mention now is that we had our hopes for a gathering in Reykjavik dashed by the COVID-19 pandemic, unfortunately. But the thinking was that things are too urgent and the momentum of the initiative is too strong to miss out on the opportunity to at least convene the members of the council, some of whom are in this meeting now, as well as all the organizational members, to have a kind of preliminary conversation about what is this initiative, where is it going, what are the basic processes and procedures that are going to give it the legitimacy and the standing and the transparency to make it survive and stand strong for weeks, months, and years to come. So that's really the purpose and the remit of this summit we have, entitled based on with an homage to our dear friend Professor Chomsky, Internationalism or Extinction, that will take place on the weekend of 18, 19, and 20 September. 18 will be the public program, so some panels, a keynote by Yanis, followed by a wonderful panel with 4 other members of the council and a few other events ranging from Latin America to a discussion with Naomi Klein about how we can move on from the pandemic. So it's a really exciting public program. And the weekend will involve some closed door discussions with council members who really have never been in the same room, both physical or virtual, to get to know each other, as well as all of our member organizations to have a chance to come together in those discussions. So that's really the program of the weekend. And so we've sent an email now to the CC that has the draft statutes for the Progressive International. What are going to be the processes that will, basically govern this quite complicated organizational form, putting these different pieces together? How will new members be onboarded? How will statements be signed? How will campaigns be launched, etc.? That's kind of one of the main objects of deliberation in the course of this summit. But that's just an invitation to do more work. So, whether it's through the CC, now we're obviously live streaming to the membership at large, this is a real invitation to get involved and to have some of these fundamental discussions, having already soft launched in May, but having this very malleable clay of an organization that we can really shape and make strong in the days to come. So I know that's a very short introduction of what's happening. I think it's short because I know that there are many more discussions that will come in the future. It's also a very exciting moment in this process. And so I look forward to working with certainly all of you here on the CC and the membership at large, engaging on the forum, et cetera, keeping everybody in the loop and informed, and also to a future beyond this summit where those processes are validated by the council and we have much more transparency, much more of a sort of sense of process and procedure that will kind of answer many of the questions that are coming out in the membership now. So I take responsibility for whatever failures of communication from the end of the Secretariat of the Progressive International, where of course I sit, back to the membership of DiEM, as to many of our member organizations. But we hope that the summit is the first step to resolving those questions, answering them sufficiently, and setting up certain processes and procedures that will be really satisfying, transparent, and exciting for everyone who's involved.
Thanks, David. Okay, Yanis, would you like to say something else?
Thank you, Vanna. The Progressive International is something we must be very, very proud of. I think in a very short, brief space in this context of today's first CC meeting after the summer election, it's important to remind our members of what the Progressive International is, how it started and where it's going, and what's the point of it, and how is DiEM involved in this, right? Because it's very easy, once we get caught up in the excitement of actually doing it, to forget that our members need to be informed, especially new members, not just of the CC, but of the movement, of how the whole thing happened. And it happened because I remember when we were putting together the manifesto of DiEM25 back in February of 2016, there was a criticism of DiEM25 by progressives in Germany, in France, that we were too Eurocentric, that, you know, the world is a big place, Europe is responsible for colonialism, we're talking about democratizing Europe. What is Europe? Where does it end? Does it end in Greece? Does it end in Turkey? Does it end in Iraq? Where the hell does it end? And why do we want to democratize Europe and not the world? Now, of course, the answer is we have to start somewhere, right? But the criticism stuck. It was an important criticism, yeah? So that was, if you want, the root of the Progressive International. And then there was an accident. The accident took place in the fall of 2018, exactly 2 years ago. I was asked by The Guardian to write a piece on what I think we should do internationally for international socialism, you know, international progressive stuff. So I wrote an article saying that we need a progressive international. And I explained, yeah, the same transnationalism, internationalism that runs through DiEM, I projected it on a global framework, on a global screen. And surprisingly, The Guardian came back and said that they had given it to Bernie Sanders, and he had written a small comment under my piece in which he started by saying Untitled is absolutely right on this. And then they had this idea, The Guardian had this idea of asking Bernie to write an article on the need for a progressive international and to have me comment on his. So they published the two articles side by side, and each one of us commented on the other's thing. One thing led to another, and within a few weeks, not weeks, days, David Adler was centrally involved in that. That's why he's speaking now about the PI, because he was there at the accidental birth of the Progressive International. And with his help, we organized a meeting in Vermont with Bernie Sanders and others. You remember that Vermont meeting where the Sanders Institute and DiEM25 put together an open call to progressives around the world to unite behind the Progressive International, you know, to create that which our articles were saying is important. So this is how it started. It's important to remember that, right? And to those who say, I understand it, but hang on a second, we didn't actually discuss it in DiEM, we didn't have an all-member vote and so on. Well, some of these things can never be the result of a deliberative process, because if we had a deliberative process, there would be no Vermont meeting, there would be no PI. Let me remind you that DiEM itself was created by not a deliberative process. Some of us go together and actually did it. And then we had a membership that could have an all-member vote. And you know, this is not the first time that to create a movement that is larger than DiEM25. Remember that in the European Parliament elections last year, we ran under the banner of the European Spring. Again, the CC initiated a process of getting as many partners as possible around Europe to run together. And again, there was no AMV. I'm saying this for members because it wasn't, I mean, what would the AMV be about? We were in the process of negotiating it. We were struggling as DiEMers because we're transnational to convince those partners that we need a common ticket and a common manifesto, the Green New Deal for Europe, to run with. But you see, in order to get that, we had to create the European Spring first. And so something similar, this organic evolution is happening with Progressive International. Progressive International is very different, of course, from the European Spring, because as you can imagine, because this is a global thing, it can be driven by DiEM25 to some extent, but we cannot own it. And we cannot impose our European Green New Deal on the world. So we need to take it step by step. It's important, personally, I think, it's important to have an international Green New Deal that we all agree on the Progressive International. Imagine if we have the same document for the world's Green New Deal in Brazil, in China, in India, in Nigeria, and so on. But this is something we have to work towards. It's not something we can put to a vote. It's not something we can impose on many partners across the world. So for now, what we've done is we've created this council and this cabinet. We have a milestone on the 18th, 19th, and 20th of September, as David put it, of the council meeting. What is important within DiEM25 is that we all embrace this, because it is, it's again part of our DNA, this internationalism. This is what created DiEM25. But let's begin a dialogue within DiEM25 that empowers our members to think of exactly what we want to do with the Progressive International. What should the DiEM25 line be? What we should be pushing for more strongly, and what less strongly. Because let's face it, the PI, the Progressive International, is going to be a major help in our struggle to democratize Europe, which will be a very hard thing to do, comrades, if the rest of the world is falling in the hands of the Nationalist International.
Thank you, Yanis. I think that now we've covered this. By David, yes. And now, Jordi, thank you for waiting.
Well, I don't know if it's better Simona to present the task force, maybe. I'm just going to say that we had a debate in the forum that everyone has been able to see. And we have very many volunteers. So we had our first meeting yesterday, and my personal evaluation, it was very useful, and we are very excited. How did it start? And maybe Simone can make us a resume of how did it go.
Always
if you want
to me. Yeah, of course. Well, the Feminist Task Force is something we instituted with one of our last all-member votes, as you may remember. The all-member vote talks about making a feminist vision for DiEM, and working on processes and the way we stay and work together.
In times of COVID.
Yeah, it's actually task force about feminism, diversity, and disabilities. So we left for another meeting the discussion whether we should have 3 task force or 3 groups led by a coordinating collective task force. But for the moment, we think it's better to discuss all these issues together, since feminism and diversity is about the power structures in the society that are embedded in gender and diversity, and the way we label people following an identity, and the way we relate with other people with assuming power relationships on the basis of their gender or their identity or diversity and so on. So we also decided to include in the general subject also minorities, because it's, in a way, it's all the same issue. It's really wonderful people, very educated. We also discussed on how to get in less educated people and to make our discourse less theoretical. And we'll start working on a questionnaire or a survey on members that we shall discuss how to put it together, but we shall try to have both theoretical work and interviews and how ways to point out people experience of power and gender roles in our relationships. We'll start working on the manifesto, but just to use it as a point of departure, and we'll maybe have also interviews with available members who give their availability for this. And our main fields of work shall be policies, setting a vision and starting from the manifesto for this vision, documents for the inside and outside of DiEM, and on the other side, procedures, analysis of the way we not just work, we stay together in groups inside DiEM, and raising awareness on the power structures, gender power structures that are embedded in this. Next meeting in 2 weeks. Everybody who wants to join is welcome. The all-member vote foresaw at least 3 CC members. By now it's me, Jordi, and Johannes. Everybody who wants to join is very welcome. We need help, and well, that's all, friends.
Thank you, Simona. Judith, did you have the hand up?
Yeah, I can't raise my hand the normal way because I'm host. I had the question, sorry if I missed it. Did you already talk about the task force on disabilities? Because you see the task forces also have a practical side, that I would have someone to talk to about how to make the website more friendly for people with disabilities. And it would be great if, as soon as you have some people, to give me their contacts so that I can start working on that.
Oh yes, sorry above all with Miro, that is a comrade who volunteered for the disabilities side of this job. We discussed with Miro about making the website more accessible, and I'll put him in touch with you, and okay, that's all.
Luis?
Yeah, just a quick note. I'd love to somehow take part in this work group, because communication is obviously language, and all of that is quite important for the task at hand, not only for us internally, but also externally. Given that we communicate with over 100,000 people very often, I'd very much like to be part of that process and be able to learn and to implement the areas of language communications and all that into our day-to-day communications, both internally and externally. So if you welcome me in, feel free to page me whenever you think that it would be appropriate for me to take part of that conversation. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Luis. Anybody else? No? Rosemary, I think that I've missed you the one circle before. I'm sorry if that's the case. Would you like to say something?
I was actually responding on the Progressive International. So if we want to move on, we'd better move on, but I can.
Well, maybe if Jordi has direct something to say directly to task force, and then we can go back to you, because we are coming to an end, and any other business, so we can continue. Thanks, Rosemary, and sorry for missing you.
No, just briefly, just I wanted to say is to encourage people to join. We just have our first meeting. Some of the people that made the debriefing this summer on the forum wasn't able to make it, so we're still open for them and for any other people. I think it's a very important task we have to do in DiEM25 and in society in general. Remember that this is an internal job, but also external. And I also want to encourage other, thank you, Luis, for stepping up front, but maybe some other people from the CC, I think would be interesting, at least maybe not having all the charge of the work that we'll share it with Simona and Johannes, but at least to be on these meetings. I think it would be both, just for us as the CC to know what is going on, but also for the group to know the importance that the CC gives to such a. So it would be great if some of you could join our next meeting. That would be next Thursday, no, the Thursday from the other week at 6 o'clock. So it would be the day.
It's Wednesday,
16,
Wednesday,
right?
the 16th, exactly.
Exactly, the 16th at 6 o'clock Central European time.
One thing that has been said yesterday is that we should advertise this group and this task force and say how much DiEM cares for these issues. So publish some news about it also.
Okay, thanks, Simona. If we are now done, thank you. And it's very good to have this task force. And just one note to take care now that when we schedule all of these calls that we will be having, not to overlap.
Clarification, because we only have 2 Zoom accounts,
yes.
That's professional ones, and therefore we need to be very careful and communicate with each other. It's a very boring procedural point, but it's one that could save us a lot of heartbreak in the future.
Yeah, Luis and then Rosemary.
Yeah, have we agreed on the permanent day of the day of the week and time for the CC Zoom calls or not? Because I'm a little bit fuzzy about that.
Good question. If everybody is all right with Thursdays at 6, I would propose to keep those. We got used to it, kind of. Yanis, if you cannot make it.
6 is a bit early for me because I may be in Parliament. The later, the better for me. This is why today I had, I asked you to shift it a bit lower, further down the diary. I'm sorry about that, but
is the same time all right?
Because 8 is too late for me.
8 is too late for you.
It's 7 o'clock fine to you, or it's still too early?
And if I can't make it, I can't make it. Or maybe I'll have to speak from within Parliament. You can I can make you deliver my speech instead of my giving it. I can connect you to the parliamentary speakers.
Well, we can have another round of doodles, but I don't think that we will ever find a day or time where.
Look,
I think that
if everybody prefers 6 o'clock.
7. If it's 7, I think it's.
If you can tolerate 7, I'm happy.
Yeah, I think 7 is a good compromise if everybody else is fine with that.
The only safe time would be midnight for me. Not even that. Sometimes Fotini and I have to stay, especially for poor Fotini, sometimes she has to stay up until 2 in the morning, that bloody Parliament. Excuse my French.
Okay, so we've settled that. It's Thursdays at 7 then. So it's, okay. Rosemary, please.
Right, it's a bit funny taking this item sort of out of consequence, but I was struck by David's phrase, the malleable clay of the Progressive International Organization. And I do think it's really important that now we've reached the point where we can encourage much wider discussion about the extraordinary ambition of this project. I think it's really important that we, from the beginning, convey that this is a project full of challenges, full of likely contradictions, that there are bound to be tensions between values and principles and tactics and negotiations, and that malleability is something that we all need to be sort of aware of as we try and chart what we think would be most wonderfully achieved by such an ambitious task. So I think it would be great if David could at some point share with us what I'm sure have been, the taste of, I don't mean the specific details because you can't do that because this is work in a certain diplomatic space, but to give us some taste of precisely the tensions, the issues that come up, the excitement of it, but also the huge difficulty of it, and that we should not underestimate that, and that we should encourage our members not to as well.
Yanis?
You're spectacularly correct, Rosemary. This malleability, these tensions are both what makes a progressive international exciting and, a source of discontent. And I'll give you an example, a recent example, or I could give you 2 or 3 examples. But for instance, maybe you have noticed that some of our members were upset that in the Progressive International there is going to be representation from the Vietnamese Communist Party. And the question is, to what extent do we want to be part of an organization in which there are political parties whose democratic credentials some of us have reason to dispute. At the same time, we have to realize that we do not own the Progressive International, and we cannot, as DiEMers, decide who is acceptable and who can be admitted and who cannot be admitted. I personally don't know what the answer to this question is. But from a political point of view, let me give you an example that I face on a daily basis. Before coming to this Zoom meeting, I was in a debate organized by the Financial Times, where one of the questions put to me by Gillian Tett of the Financial Times was about China. There's no doubt, personally, I would not want to live in a one-party state where the authorities can decide that I should disappear in the middle of the night. At the same time, we certainly should not, at least speaking for myself, I certainly am not going to succumb to the Cold War narrative of Donald Trump, who wants to present China as the new evil empire. There are comrades within the Progressive International who have very good arguments as to why China is a hotbed of progressive, democratic forces and a new proletarian spirit. There are others who completely disagree with that. I think that we should be ready for a Progressive International where these disputes take place within, rather than a Progressive International that seeks to erect barriers to keep people outside if we don't like precisely their take. So these are part of the discussions that we're going to have to learn how to be party to, and how to, when it comes to DiEM and Europe, we can be a lot more exclusive. Because we are a movement with electoral wings, with a manifesto which is very specific. We came together organically. We're transnational. We have the same position in Ireland as we have in Greece on everything, even though we have disagreements amongst ourselves. That cannot be the way that the PI works, and DiEMers must understand that.
Thanks. I hope this clarifies some of the questions that were also frequently asked. So, if we don't have anything pressing, maybe we could wrap it up, or somebody would like to say something at the end.
I was wondering if we're already ready to comment on the request we received from the Italian NC or from a member of the Italian NC. Apparently there's a Turkish journalist. I didn't hear about this before, I'm remiss. There's a Turkish journalist who has been on hunger strike for a long time, and the European Court of Human Rights has said there's nothing basically wrong. He's not in any danger or something. Let me call the, actually I sent the email to you. I can also try and copy paste it. Anyway, the Italian NC requested the CC to try to put some pressure.
Beral.
You mean the lawyer who was in prison and making this a woman lawyer died, unfortunately, but the male one is released now.
Unsal?
Yes, he is released.
There you are, Judith. She's been released.
Yeah. And he was, you know that the, 1 minute, please, I will, the European Court of Human Rights President, Robert Spano, is in Turkey. But he didn't make any announcement about these hunger strikes. And he is being protested by many NGOs, and the journalist and academic Mehmet Altan has sent an open letter to him, and he said that he was teaching in Istanbul University. I mean, Mehmet Altan was teaching in Istanbul University, and this president is going to make his speech in Istanbul University, where all the academics have been thrown out since 5 years. So he protested his presence in this context.
Thank you, Beral. And I hope that that answers. I mean, it's a good news for a change that she's been released. So there's nothing to put pressure on. There are, of course, unfortunately, other people, but this one's been released. Okay, so Pavel, since this is basically your last CC meeting, maybe you would like to close the meeting.
I hope to attend a few more CC meetings before the end of the month, but it's very exciting to see this new group convene. I'll also be excited to stay in touch with everyone after I transition into my new role and transition out of this role, hopefully setting DiEM up with a bit more of an organizing infrastructure, which we're working on. We have been working on for a while with the office, and I'll really look forward to working with you all on the Progressive International as we continue to explore ways of deepening the Progressive International's relationships with its various members across the world. And yeah, good luck to you all. Have an exciting and wonderful year, and I have my fingers crossed there won't be another pandemic to kind of throw the spanner in the works next year, but never know.
Okay, thanks. And I don't know, anyone else? Okay, good. Thank you for being here, and see you next year. Next year, next week.
Are you giving us a holiday?
Well, maybe that's the result of not having any rest this summer. So yeah, see you next week, next year.
Carpe diem, everyone.
Carpe diem.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.